Hi everyone. Today my guest is Thom Kozik, who is the CEO and co-founder of preEmptive, a successful entrepreneur with multiple startups and exits, former senior executive at Microsoft, Yahoo, Atari, and Marriott. And I'm super grateful to talk to you today. So could you please give a little bit of a background about yourself and maybe tell your story?
Sure, happy to, Danny. And first off, thanks. It's a privilege to join you on the podcast today. I come from a blue collar working class family in Chicago. As I like to say, first generation of my family to finish high school, let alone go to college. I had a early career at the NSA, National Security Agency, where I was an intern, and I got to go through college while I was there. And then I ended up in the software industry. It was right around the time of the beginning of the software industry taking off, the personal computer revolution. And so I ended up at this small company called Microsoft not too shortly after that. Worked on many different products while I was there. Windows, as I like to say, parts of Windows are my fault. I'm sorry. So I was there for just about 7 years, including consulting time and employee time to the company. My last couple of years there, I was the first liaison we ever had to the film and television industry, because we were going to invent interactive TV back in those days. And so I would spend a lot of my time here in Los Angeles or in New York working with the film and television networks, trying to figure out what do they need interactivity on television to be. And of course, this is the era right on the cusp of the web taking off for consumers. And so when that whole business model blew up for everybody, Time Warner, Microsoft, General Instruments, everybody else who was playing in that space. This is in early '94. I had just had the privilege of standing in for Bill Gates at the Superhighway Summit here at UCLA with then Vice President Gore, where he famously, said he invented the internet. But after that, Congress had re-regged cable and deregged telco, so all the interactive business models blew up. And a number of us at Microsoft said, well, we'd seen the shining city on the hill. We went off and started our own ventures. I went and created Mindshare Media with another friend of mine in the industry for Microsoft. We had a number of great clients. I built Discovery Channel Online. We built the first online almanacs for Major League Baseball and the NBA, and ran those for a few years. Sold out my portion some years later, and ended up doing a little bit of mercenary work. I had friends in venture capital and investment banking, and so I took opportunities to go help a team of theirs at one company. Long story short, I ended up being approached by, again, another former Microsoft colleague, my current co-founder, Patrick Ford, about helping him bring a European gaming platform into the U.S. Now, I was an avid gamer. As a matter of fact, even while during my internship at the NSA, I had a part-time job managing video game arcades in suburban Maryland as a way to make some money on the side. Because as you know, college intern, you're not bringing in income. So it was fun to decide to go dabble in that industry. And we brought All Seeing Eye over from Finland. Two young guys over there had done a fantastic job of building a really great platform. As we'd raised some interest in a term sheet from Pacific Rim Ventures, and we were out looking for a strategic investor. We talked to the folks at CNET, famous for having the GameSpot site. They turned around, and we then went ahead and approached Yahoo, because Dan Rosenzweig, who at that moment in time was the chief operating officer over at Yahoo, he was the guy that had created GameSpot while he was at CNET. And so we'd gotten this tremendous offer from CNET where they didn't want to invest. They wanted to just buy us outright. We went to Dan and asked, is this a good deal? What do you think? Dan was very competitive and said, I'll buy the whole thing right now. And so when you get two offers like that back to back, Mama taught me eat when fed. So we took the Yahoo deal. I ended up running the business side of Yahoo Games for a couple of years as part of that earnout. And thankfully, my two friends in Finland told their two friends in Berlin about if you want to get your game company in the U.S., talk to Tom. So I ended up helping bring a company called WasUp over, which we then sold a couple of years later to SoftBank Japan. They told their two friends in Hamburg, who have a company called BigPoint. I helped bring BigPoint into the U.S. We ended up transacting that to NBC Universal. So after that, a very dear old friend of mine in the video game business named Nolan Bushnell, who was the original creator and founder of Atari, he said, look, you just brought 3 video game companies in from Europe into the U.S. did you know that the French own what's left of Atari? So we bought Atari back, or bought the U.S. entity back. I ran and built the online and mobile game business for Atari. We owned the App Store in the summer of 2010, which was phenomenal. We launched some really great titles and had a pretty interesting business model for the publishers and the studios to reinvent all the old IP, all the old intellectual property, the game titles that had been from decades prior. Not too long after that, a former colleague of mine from Marriott, Karin, who's now the global marketing officer for Major League Baseball. Karin had moved from her leadership position at Yahoo, and at that moment in time, she was the global marketing officer for Marriott. She approached me and said, Thom, you know all about gamification. You understand behavioral economics. How would you reinvent the loyalty program? And I never imagined, just like I never imagined going into video gaming, I never imagined going into hospitality. And given the opportunity to play with a 100+ million member community at Marriott Rewards at the time, and effectively all loyalty programs are games of a form, in terms of chasing incentives and doing different behaviors in order to earn those additional incentives and level up. It was a fun opportunity, and so I jumped on there, did some reinvention. We created some great initiatives, and then 2 years into that, our CEO Arne Sorensen said, "Let's go buy Starwood." So we bought Starwood Hotels and Resorts, integrated the two programs, Starwood Preferred Guest and Marriott Rewards, to create Bonvoy, the current program. There was about a period of a year after that the act of integrating two companies of that scale is not trivial. We had a wonderful meeting with the board where Arnie looked and said, "Look, we've got 5 years of plumbing ahead of us, and we didn't hire Thom to be a plumber." So I was looking at other things to do in the company. Considered going over to China and running the Alibaba joint venture. Some of the executives were discussing that. We were looking at alternative payment models. Ultimately, none of that was all that interesting. And so I ended up, at this time, I was also on the board of a loyalty software company that was using blockchain technology. And I had been introduced to Bitcoin many years prior when it was first starting to get on the edge of public awareness. And given some of the people that were proselytizing Bitcoin to me, I was a little skeptical. But being a former engineer, I looked under the covers and I saw this amazing thing called blockchain. And I thought, this solves a lot of problems, particularly for gaming, where you have the need to transition and transfer virtual goods and virtual currency. So I looked at that and I said, this is a perfect fit for a loyalty program, which has a virtual currency. You have points or miles and airline or hotel loyalty program. And Loyal, based out of San Francisco at the time, now based out of Dubai, Loyal was the only company on the horizon that also saw that future at the time. So I joined the board, and then ultimately ended up joining full-time as the chief product officer and also the titular CTO for a while. That company's now since sold to its primary investors over in Dubai, and they're still running with it. And then it was around that time that I resurrected the idea that has become Eventual, the first product we're launching out of preEmptive. The sad story about that is that back in 2011, a very, very dear friend of mine, Omar Ahmad, he was the original CTO at Napster, or not the second CTO at Napster. He was the only guy at the Discovery Channel when I first started interacting with them during my Microsoft days who knew how to spell HTML. So we tagged him and said, great, you're going to be the webmaster. Omar went on to also work at being executive at Excite at Home, a big broadband provider in that era. And at this point in time, in addition to an incredible TED Talk that's one of the more popular ones out there, he gave about how to hack government, not in the hacker sense of breaking in, but how to use the procedures and policies of government to make sure that you are heard as a citizen. After that TED Talk, Omar decided to go into local politics. He became a city councilman in San Carlos, California, up in the Bay Area, on the peninsula. And then he parlayed that to becoming the mayor of San Carlos. And while he was mayor, he and I became involved in yet another startup together. And sadly, in April of 2011, he died suddenly of a coronary. We had just been working together a little 3-day hackathon at his house, him and I, the days prior. So it was, a great deal of sadness. But as we were standing there graveside for his services, I was watching people posting to his Facebook feed and social media feeds, not knowing he had passed away. And that triggered a thought in myself and my head and that of a couple of colleagues of saying, how do you handle this digital legacy problem? What happens when something happens to you? Well, the reality was the more we would look at this idea and roll it around and see where was there an opportunity, where was there product market fit. The challenge was nobody likes to think about death. And there's plenty of opportunities out there for free last will and testament, free power of attorney. There's dozens and dozens of sites with templates or where you can create that yourself. There are services like LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer and many others that will help you create these at relatively low cost. And then there's larger end applications and services out there, all the way from certified financial planners and estate planners down to applications that they can use to help people plan through that. And so we looked at that space and said, all right, there's clearly a problem. People aren't doing this. Because everyone we spoke to said, oh my gosh, I need to take care of those things. But nobody did. And we realized with some analysis, and again, we dust off this idea every couple of years and look at where's the problem? Why isn't there a solution out there that's universally adopted or at least popular? And what we realized early last year, beginning of 2023, with some more customer research and some more market analysis, we found out that, people don't want to make plans. Putting all that emphasis on some individual to create the plan is just onerous. Literally, we've seen applications out there that hit people with hundreds and hundreds of questions. And it's, again, around a topic you don't want to think about or talk about. So as much as you may want to provide and take care of the people that you leave behind, it's not something you want to think about. And so we've flipped the script with Eventual, and we've taken a completely different approach. And one we think will be successful. We're launching the product's MVP here on the 29th of February, and we've got a few hundred people on the wait list already. So we're excited to see the reception to it. And we know we've gotten stuff wrong. We just want the customers to show us which parts are the most important to fix first. And of course, we've got a long roadmap of other capability and stuff we want to add to it as well. Now, I'll pause there.
No, that's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing that. I'm still kind of shocked that you have had this amazing journey as a first person in the family who finished the high school, which is crazy. How first of all, congrats on that. That's a great accomplishment. All of that you did with the situation you started with. I'm curious, how did you do this? What's what would be an advice? Yeah, how did you do this?
Well, it's not that complicated, Danny. The reality was my father was in his core, he was a diehard entrepreneur. I have many memories of even being, 5 years old and him opening. He was a truck mechanic by trade. And I guess that's what they trained him to be in the Army. And when I was about 5, I remember him starting a garage down the street from where we lived, where I was growing up. And I don't know the particulars. I just know it didn't last. It didn't make it. And then he was working for another trucking company as being one of their mechanics. And every so many years, my dad would leave that company, try to start his own garage, wouldn't make it because he really didn't understand business. Again, not even a high school education, right? So that business would fail, and he'd go back to the same trucking company. They'd keep taking him back again and again and again. Part of the core wasn't so much my dad's lack of understanding of business as much as it was he was a man who loved to give. If a friend came to him and said, I need my car fixed or I need my truck fixed, and I don't have the money, my dad would do it. And so, the liabilities or the costs were always there, but not always the revenue. Ultimately, when my dad had some modicum of success with one facility, when I was in high school at this point, he unfortunately, the owners of the building, they had a fire. The shop was destroyed. Insurance doesn't cover everything, especially when you have literally tens of thousands of dollars worth of tools. So the trucking company brought him back, but this time they recognized and said, okay, we get it. You keep leaving. We're going to put you in charge of your own division. Here you go. Run your own business inside the company. And so he was managing intermodal shipping containers for them out of Chicago. And I never saw my dad happier. He finally had the chance to show what he could do, be the boss, and he was incredibly successful at it. And so it was that constant entrepreneurship that was such an inspiration to me. I also had a great teacher back in my high school, John F. Kennedy High School back in Chicago, who taught me you will never be rich if someone else is signing your paychecks. And that always stuck with me as well. So, from having business cards as a kid for shoveling snow and mowing lawns in the neighborhood to having my very first consulting company right after I got out of the agency and started my career. It was always in my mind that I was going to be an entrepreneur. And yeah, I've had some incredible times at companies like Microsoft, which wasn't that big when I joined it. And also, restarting Atari from scratch here in the U.S. Yahoo, of course, was a massive organization, but we'd sold a startup to it. So, it's been something I've enjoyed, even when I've been engaged in a large corporation. The entrepreneurship has always been a key motivator. What new innovation can we do? How can we look at things differently? And frankly, at Marriott, that was part of the success. Was I didn't have a long history in the hospitality industry. Most of my organization, I had about 150 people worldwide I was responsible for. A large staff in Bethesda, the corporate headquarters, and then regional offices around the world, and the groups of employees in IT and in finance. And I was an outsider. And there was a period of time where Marriott was actively looking to hire outsiders, such as Karin, my boss, myself, and others. And it was great. It brought a different perspective. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do here with Eventual, bring a different perspective to this issue about being prepared. And, it's not about, the prepper community per se and, having supplies in case of an earthquake or something like that. It's about the information and peace of mind. And that's really what it comes down to. The core we're trying to focus on right now is peace of mind. And we discovered that the way to achieve that isn't for me to sit down and make a plan, but to open the door to everyone else in my life who can turn to me and say, Tom, if something were to happen to you, here's what I need to know. Now, it could be my co-founder needing to know details at his fingertips around our banking relationships or other business aspects. It could be my brother across the country in Washington, D.C. needing my medical records. It could be my friends at the dog park needing to know the door code to the house and where his food is and the veterinary information for my pet dog. So any number of different scenarios for a day-to-day emergency. Use that example of pet care. Just last April, I was rear-ended in traffic here in LA. And I learned that while you're laying in the back of an ambulance is probably not the best place to try to be texting friends and find someone who can go to your house, give them the door code. Here's where the dog food is. Take care of the dog, and I'll be back in touch. You want that all to be as automated as possible and secure. The information has to be secure. We're building it on the principle of end-to-end encryption so that we don't even know what you put in. We know that you have a record for pet care, what you have in it, that's between you and the people you designate as recipients. And it should be triggered automatically. You shouldn't have to manually trigger it. You can trigger it based on biometrics, such as crash detection or fall detection from your watch or your phone. We've got one use case that I love that's very, very particular to me. People who know me know that I'm such a geek and nerd that if I am not online for more than 8 hours, something must be wrong. I'm always checking my phone or my watch. And if more than 8 hours passes, I want a notification sent to me. And that notification's got a 10-minute timer set on it so that if I don't respond in 10 minutes, my brother and my co-founder are both notified separately, asking them, is Tom okay? If they don't answer in 10 minutes, then the information distribution kicks off automatically. So, things, there's so many different ways we can help protect people and make sure that the people around us have what they need to know.
Yeah, and if you're listening to the podcast, you can find the link to Eventual App in the description. And again, it launches on February 29th.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And it's a leap year, which is an interesting date to pick, right?
It is. We're that way we can wait 4 years before we say we're a year old. But the interesting thing is, we recognize that going back to the point about end of life planning, which is not something we are targeting, but we know we will have to accommodate as part of our feature set. it's really devastating and personally concerning to me that if you look at the stats in the U.S., 72% of Americans overall have no end-of-life planning in place. The numbers are difficult to get in any great detail outside the U.S. Canada is relatively easy, but you go to Europe or Middle East, Africa, or Asia, the numbers are all over the map. It's hard to get really precise data. But let's dive back into the U.S. In the U.S., if you look at marginalized communities, in the Black community, it's 76% of the Black community has no end-of-life plan in place. Hispanic community, 77 to 78% based on some estimates. And there's not a lot of products that are targeting the Hispanic community, frankly. But there's a misconception amongst sectors of our culture that, well, I don't have any wealth, so I don't need to make any kind of plans. And that's not what this is about. This is about how do you give that peace of mind to the people around you. There's going to be things people need to know when something happens. And again, that something happening shouldn't be just end of life. It should be a natural disaster, an earthquake hits, a wildfire. I've got one of our advisors lives in Miami, and he's had to evacuate several times over the past decade for hurricanes. That's not the time to try to be, seeing, well, who am I going to share my location with? How do I keep them updated? All those kind of details. So to be able to just have that happen as a plan that gets executed when he gets an alert from the U.S. National Weather Service, that's the kind of thing we're trying to solve.
Yeah, and it's super. It sounds like a super valuable app, but as you said, 72% of Americans, if I'm not mistaken, they do not have that plan in place of end of life. The problem is, how do you convince them otherwise? If you are selling the app, you have to market it to them. So how do you solve this problem?
Great question, Danny. And that was, like I said, that was the big turning point for us early last year, after having been pondering this idea for a decade, which was when we started talking to people and asking them, the classic old job to be done form of customer research. And I will tell you, it's almost universal that whenever we talk about the product, people tell us, "Oh my gosh, I need that." Particularly if it's a couple, the wife always says, "I need that now. I want that yesterday." And which is not surprising, because if you look at the stats in the insurance industry, in a married couple, it's the wife that makes the predominant decisions around insurance. So it falls in line with our cultural dynamics. But again, what we learned in looking at this was people don't want to sit down and make the plan. So if it's overwhelming, right? Oh my gosh, how many different people do I need to think about? How many different things do I need to worry about? Where are those files? It's just too much, and people abandon it. That was another piece we learned, was looking at all of the free tools available for any kind of end-of-life or emergency planning. The abandonment rate was in the high 80 to 90% range of people who even considered using those kind of tools. So we started asking people, again, jobs to be done methodology. Well, if this is so important to you, if you're all saying this is a great idea and you want this, why aren't you doing it now? And we did get a small fraction of people who said, "Oh, I have. I've put that information into an email." Okay, great. Who did you send it to? This one person. Well, when did you send it to them? Oh, a couple of years ago. All right. How confident are you that when something happens, they're going to be able to find that email again? Oh, good question. Or we talked to people who said, "Oh, no, I set up a Dropbox folder for my elderly parents." How often do your elderly parents use Dropbox? And are they going to remember that password? Right? And it's a challenge. And so we recognize it's not about the person making the plan. Ask the people who, think about yourself. Think about other members of your family, your close friends. If something were to happen to any one of them you can think of right now, what would you need to know? We asked a lot of people when the Founder University kickoffs for Cohort 7 happened back on January 5th up in Redwood City. We would ask fellow cohort entrepreneurs there, is your mom or dad still alive? And most people said yes. And we'd ask them, great, what medications are they on? And people would just go blank. They'd realize, I have no idea, right? One of the other things we discovered in doing research was we talked to emergency medical room technicians and EMTs and paramedics, because of course, all of our iPhones and our Android phones have got now the capability for an emergency contact to be programmed into your phone. And aside from the automatic calling feature, we asked those first responders, how often do you look at that name or contact that person that's listed on a victim's phone? And almost all the time they laughed at us. True story. Because they pointed out, well, if we're even able to reach that person at all, which most of the time they're not, then when we ask that person, what medications is Tom on? What's his blood type? They have no idea. So they recognize that calling the people that you have listed on your phone as for emergency information is kind of pointless. So they, at the hospital, they'll turn it over to social services to have somebody eventually keep trying and get in contact with that person to let them know that you're in the hospital, say. But by turning it over, to your point again about how do you sell this, we sell it to the people that will be most affected. So coming out of the gate, our primary campaigns are going to be directed towards women 24 to 44. That would be the primary voice of the first marketing campaign. And asking them, if something were to happen to mom or dad, do you know where the blank is? And the answer we know for 99% of the people we've ever spoken to is no, I don't know where any of that stuff is. So I don't know the information. So we make it very easy for that person, without having no payment involved, free account. That person can set up an account on Eventual and issue requests to the important people in their life and say, Dad, I need to know this information. Mom, I need to know that information. Reach out to a sibling. Here's the information I would want if something happened to you. Those people on the receiving end of those requests, the accumulated set of requests you get, those become a plan. And they are our paid user, ultimately. Because their free version will allow you a certain number of secure recipients that you're able to send information to. And then above that number, then we ask that you join as a subscriber. And along with that comes extra storage and extra security capabilities and things of that nature. So we have a free tier. We're targeting a $9.99 per month tier, discounted, of course, 20% off of that on an annual basis. And then our third tier is a premium tier at $20 a month, again, discounted on an annual basis, 20% off of that. And that compares very, very well to some of the other solutions out there in the market that are, again, focused on end of life only, without any automatic triggers, without the kind of controls that we've put in place. But more importantly, it's, what price do you put on peace of mind? So, when you compare it to the cost that somebody pays for insurance, it becomes de minimis. It's such a trivial number relative to the cost of the insurance.
Yeah, so it's for the people who care, not the people who are in danger of dying, if I can call it that.
Well, that's one way to look at it, yeah. It's everybody cares. It's who's most motivated, right? And the person most motivated is the person living with the fear of something happening to someone in their life. And that's, they want to be able to have that information at their fingertips when that occurs. It's, the person on the receiving end of those requests, the planner, if we will, in this context, they care as well, but we got to make it easy for them.
Can I ask you a hard question?
Please.
Yeah. So regarding monetization of this thing, it's a very, like, when a person passes away, it's extremely hard times for their close ones. And you also have this business model where you have the subscription and you allow them to store the important information there. Do you ever consider having this moral dilemmas on you kind of monetizing the app during very hard times and
Okay,
people
I
have
understand
to
your
pay?
question. So we're not actually monetizing at the time of the event, right? Our subscription plan works, again, free tier, which we expect 96% of our customers will probably be on the free tier in our financial model. Then in the paid tiers, that again comes in where a free version, you can send out all the requests you want, no cost to you. If you want to create a plan for other people in your life, you're allowed 3 secure recipients that you can designate. If you want a 4th, 5th, onward and upward from there, then it's a paid subscription. And again, there's other features that you can see on the website that detail how we do our pricing. But so the premise isn't that you're paying at the time of the occurrence of the issue, right? In the same way with insurance, you pay in advance, hoping that you're covered when an incident occurs. But also, even for that 96% that we anticipate will be staying on the free tier, that has a tremendous value in driving virality for us. If you think about it, the more people that make requests of someone, the more that person is incentivized to subscribe. Because you're talking about being able to take care of somebody. We also view not only the strong virality, but I'm really going to be excited to see how low our churn numbers are. Because if you stop and think about it, one of the issues that's important, Danny, is that I've made a commitment. You've requested some information from me if something were to happen to me, if I'm hospitalized, if there's a medical emergency, if there's an accident, whatever. You've requested some information from me for that circumstance. Am I going to cut you off? Am I going to get 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years into it? Am I going to go, you know what? Nah, I don't need to share that information anymore. Not likely, right? Once you've set up these obligations to respond to people in your family, friends, even work colleagues, because that's another dimension for us down the road is small, medium business continuity, being able to know what to do in the business when something happens to somebody, a key member of the team. But I'm not going to turn that off. I'm not likely to say, you know what, I don't want to fulfill that obligation anymore. Another piece on that free side is we do monetize or have intentions. You'll see it when the product launches at the end of the month. We do monetize through some affiliate advertising. So, this is great lead generation if you think about it for folks like insurance companies, for estate planners, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of those given the competitive aspect. But there's a number of other services. And then there's a marketplace of supplies. Do you need a new first aid kit? Do you need a new go bag? If you live in California and you know about earthquakes, you know about go bags, right? So, there'll be some monetization through that. So affiliate advertising, affiliate deals, a little bit of marketplace. None of that is going to cover the entire cost of the free tier. That's really being borne by a percentage of the revenue we're getting from the paid tiers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for explanation. And before we end this episode, I really want you to share any lessons or mistakes that you've made during your amazing time in all of those companies. What would you share to the audience?
Well, I've really been humbled to be a mentor in Founder Institute, a different organization than Founder University that we're in right now in cohort 7. But Founder Institute was started by Adeo Risi. Adeo is part of the original PayPal team and also famous for being Elon Musk's college roommate, in addition to starting some really cool online businesses himself. But when Founder Institute, started back around 2010 or so, I stepped up and have helped run the LA chapter and was a mentor in excellence for several years. And as I would tell everybody that came through Founder Institute, I can't tell you what to do, but I have plenty of things I can tell you not to do. I have lots of scar tissue. And, sometimes my job may only be tell you where not to step. One of the things I see, particularly it's relevant to me now, that we're in the middle of fundraising for preEmptive to fund Eventual and the next products we have on the roadmap. We're watching our colleagues in cohort 7 at Founder University also out raising. And you hear Jason Calacanis talk about this a lot, and it's certainly something I've emphasized over my career. The last thing you want to do is give too much money to a startup. And as much, as a startup, I want more funding. Too much messes with valuation. It distorts your perspective on what it is you need to be focusing your time and attention on, what you need to do. So that's one of the challenges is, be a bit modest about the valuation you're really trying to set and how much you need right now. I'm a product guy at my heart. I've been an engineer, I've been in marketing, and I love working on the product for Eventual. At the end of the day, I have to recognize that I need to let go. As we grow the team here now, we started to add more engineers. We're about to add a product owner. Letting go is a big challenge and a difficult lesson. It's one I made mistakes at many times, but you got to trust the people you're bringing on board, and because I can't do it. I can't do everything. I don't have any license on a unique insight into the customers. I have a lot of opinions and a lot of suppositions and a lot of theories to test. But learning to let go is a key piece as well. I think another lesson, and one that people have asked me, well, why did you join Founder University if you've had these prior successes? You know, people in venture capital and everything else. Why did you need to join this? And it comes down to just a couple of things: discipline and accountability. Right? For me, I've got a million things that could be vying for my attention any given moment of any day. So to be able to have the accountability that a program like Founder University offers, and to not only the leadership at Founder University, but to one another, to each other in the cohort, and the discipline of the coursework and the structure, which is phenomenal. It's beyond anything I've seen out there. So that helps. That helps me focus my time and attention onto the things that matter most. And going back to that piece about product focus, that letting go, part of the reason I have to let go is because I now need to transition into the role of CEO, which if you're a first-time founder, you need to understand means Chief Extraction Officer. Your job is to extract funding from as many different people as possible as you grow the company. You may think it's about being the executive in charge. It's really about being the fundraiser in charge for the first several years of your company's existence.
Thanks for sharing everything, Thom. That was an amazing conversation. Thanks for sharing all of your stories, advice, and good luck with the launch. The product sounds amazing. So it's out February 29th, 2024. We will put the link to the website into the description. So if you're interested, please check it. I'll definitely check it. And yeah, glad talking to you. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much, Danny. Appreciate it.